A 737 crashes into a small turboprop sitting on a runway, completely mangling it.
It was as if we were in the middle of a big fireball.
2 months after 9/11, an Airbus 300 crashes, its tail mysteriously breaking off.
How much blood has to be spilled before we take corrective action? Safety does have a price.
An L-1011 jumbo jet unexpectedly loses altitude and plunges into the Everglades. What triggers the disaster?
Every bit of my clothing was blown right off.
Just miles from a runway, a jet runs out of fuel and slams into a hillside.
It doesn't take an aeronautics expert to know that if your engines go off, it's difficult to fly.
And a routine continental commuter flight suddenly pitches and nosedives into a crowded Buffalo suburb.
We dropped the ball.
Mistakes, oversights, distractions, and in some cases just poor judgment. All these crashes are caused by human error.
The devastation to the entire operation is catastrophic. It's one of your own has potentially made an error that has resulted in this calamity, this tragedy.
There are many reasons why planes crash: poor weather conditions, mechanical difficulties, and structural failures. But according to a study published by the FAA, more often than not, the cause is just plain human error.
Human error shows up in about 80% of aviation accidents. If you find something that's mechanical in an airplane, you can change it. Changing how humans think or how they react under a given set of circumstances is much, much more difficult.
In this hour, dramatic animations will put you where no camera has ever been, up close to show how and why these disasters occurred. It appears to be a normal landing as U.S. Air Flight 1493 lowers its main landing gears onto the runway at Los Angeles International Airport. And then, in a flash,
that's a hill.
The 737 smashes onto a commuter turboprop that is sitting on the same runway, crushing the smaller plane completely.
The window next to me started melting.
In the early evening of February 1st, 1991, SkyWest Flight 5569, a turboprop carrying 10 passengers and 2 crew members, taxis toward an intersection of runway 24 left.
Intersection departures, with particularly for a turboprop, was a means to make their flight more effective, and they could get off the ground faster.
At 6:04 p.m., an air traffic controller clears SkyWest onto the runway, but advises the plane to hold its position.
And at that point is where one of the big causes of this accident sequence occur. She does not immediately clear them for takeoff. There's a delay. Every second that goes by, there's a mounting threat.
That's because minutes earlier, U.S. Air Flight 1493, a 737 that began its journey in Syracuse, New York, had been cleared to land on that same runway.
All they see is the menagerie of lights. It looks, in their mental picture, it looks like a normal landing runway. And as they're flying closer and closer, they still can't discern airplane lights from runway lights. They're all the same color.
The Boeing 737's main landing gears touch down. Then, as the nose lowers, the landing lights reveal the turboprop. That's the first time the captain sees the plane.
That's a hill.
There's an explosion on impact, and the small plane bursts into flames. But the 737 can't stop. At 70 miles per hour, it skids and finally crashes into an abandoned firehouse.
The floor was heaving, and the smoke burst right in front of my jump seat.
Fireball. Every passenger window was illuminated orange.
But I can see every passenger that can possibly have a view of me staring at me, looking for an answer.
Flight attendants began shouting orders to evacuate, but because of the raging fire, none of the left exit doors can be used. The front right exit door is damaged and won't stay open. Only a few are able to escape from there.
We jumped off the aircraft. I pushed the first person off the aircraft because I figure it's either you break your leg or you will not see your legs.
The right wing exit becomes blocked, leaving only one more exit for passengers to escape, the right rear exit. In all, 67 of the 89 passengers and crew make it out alive. But not everyone makes it through the exit doors.
We took a position on the nose of the airplane, and we happened to see that the co-pilot of the plane was trying to get out of the window. I took the ladder, small 12-foot ladder, and put it up to the nose of the airplane, and I was able to take a few steps up and help the co-pilot out, pull him out, and cradle him like a baby, bring him down, and then walk him with another fireman to safety.
The captain and the senior flight attendant are among the victims.
I remember feeling just a lot of sorrow. That 2 of my crew members died, that so many passengers died.
With the focus on the 737, few even know there's a crushed turboprop underneath it. The small plane is twisted and mangled beyond recognition. There are no survivors.
I did not know that we hit another aircraft until we were in the terminal, and they were doing triage on us. And I asked about the crew, and they said, "Which crew?"
Investigators immediately began the grim task of finding out what went wrong. John Cox, who is now an MSNBC aviation analyst, was an investigator for the Airline Pilots Association at the time.
As an aircraft accident investigator, it's one of the tougher ones that I have worked because there were still, some of the bodies were still in there. These things are always catastrophic to work, but it is absolutely vital that a group of people do this job so that we understand what happened and don't have a reoccurrence.
While poor visibility from the tower to the runway and glare shining into the tower are part of the problem, investigators focus on air traffic control.
Air traffic controllers, as a matter of routine, multitask.
929, take Victor, right turn 31 right and hold short of Whiskey.
They're issuing landing clearances, takeoff clearances, so the multitasking on that evening would not have been unusual. It is very unusual for a controller not to remember that they have an airplane in position on a runway.
But according to the NTSB, that is exactly what happened. It turns out that the local controller simply forgot that SkyWest was sitting on the runway intersection.
There were some things that were going on that did get her distracted. 1493 checked in. She looked. The runway end was clear, and it was just a human error. I wouldn't expect that anyone on the SkyWest to have ever understood what happened. It was instantaneous.
When U.S. Air Flight 1493 crashes into SkyWest Flight 5569, the aftermath is horrific. 22 people on the U.S. Air flight, including the captain, are killed. All 10 passengers and 2 crew members in the small SkyWest plane also die.
I wouldn't expect that anyone on the SkyWest to have ever understood what happened. It was instantaneous.
At the NTSB hearings, the air traffic controller, Robin Washer, testifies that she initially thought it was an act of terrorism.
U.S. Air 1493 came over the threshold normally. When the aircraft blew up, I assumed that the aircraft had a bomb on board, then it blew up.
Then Washer remembers another plane was on the runway.
I went to the ground control and I said, see if you're in contact with SkyWest 569. I went to the supervisor and I told her, I said, this is what I believe U.S. Air hit.
She has a responsibility to ensure its safety from other traffic. That didn't happen.
The sound was almost overwhelming.
David Kelly, the surviving first officer, testifies that he and the captain were never made aware of another plane on the runway.
As far as we could tell, there was nothing down the runway anywhere. That airplane all of a sudden showed up out of nowhere.
The cabin lights went out, the emergency lights came on.
For Flight Attendant Bill Ibarra, who was critically injured, the hearing is an emotional experience.
I was filled with gratitude when passengers who survived came over and thanked me for my actions.
As a consequence of the collision, intersection departures at night are no longer permitted. And while on the runway, pilots are encouraged, though not required, to remind air traffic control that they are waiting for instructions.
These types of procedures were completely capable of being done before the accident. This was a totally preventable accident.
Across the country, and nearly 2 decades later, another crash caused by human error. Continental Connection Flight 3407 nears the Buffalo Airport for landing. The turboprop suddenly pitches up, stalls, and goes into a series of terrifying rolls. The pilot fights to gain control, but the plane plummets 1,600 feet into a house.
This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft.
February 12, 2009. Winter storms delay Flight 3407 for 2 hours at Newark International Airport in New Jersey. Once it departs, the flight takes only an hour to Buffalo. But 3 miles from the runway, the captain runs into problems.
The speed was a little higher than he anticipated, and he made an adjustment. And what he did was he reduced the power, and they also extended the landing gear, which adds a lot of drag, and the speed decreased fairly rapidly to the point that a warning device in the airplane activated.
The warning system seems to take the captain by surprise, but it should be a fairly simple correction to get the plane's speed back up.
Instead of letting the airplane's nose drop to build up that airspeed, he gave it full power and lifted the nose up. He should have done the exact opposite thing.
Planes generally fly at a slight nose-up angle. This makes air move faster over the top of the wing than the bottom. This creates the important difference in pressure needed for lift, which allows planes to fly. But with too much pitch, the air pushes against the wing, not flowing across it, causing the plane to stall.
And when it stalled, the airplane became unstable. It rolled off to one side, then another. He continued to have the nose up.
The plane's stall protection system tries to take over by lowering the nose to gain airspeed. But the captain repeatedly pulls the nose back up, essentially putting the plane back into a stall. After 3 stalls, recovery is impossible. The plane crashes in the town of Clarence Center, 5 miles northeast of the Buffalo Airport. Everyone on board is killed, as well as 1 man on the ground. One of the victims is the daughter of former Continental pilot Mike Loftus.
Mallow was going up to a reunion game. Basically, it was a alumni game at Buffalo State College for the women's program. I think I turned the TV on that night to watch it for a brief moment, and that was when I had all those flames, and I turned the TV off.
One question investigators have is why the captain responded incorrectly when the plane stalled. According to the NTSB, part of the problem may have been the pilot's basic skill.